Hello, everyone. If I could call tonight's meeting to order. Tom Chapa.
Here.
Dave Crisipoli. Here. Pamela Dowd.
Here.
Lisa Glidden.
Here.
James McKenzie.
Here.
Sean Onmack.
Here.
Heidi Sweeney. Here. Maura Dempsey. Here. If you would all join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. First on the agenda tonight will be the recognition from the New York State School Boards Association. Dr. Calvin.
Good evening, Board. Hope everyone is doing well. This evening, we have a special guest with us today from the New York State School Board Association, and I'll let him introduce himself this evening to us. But he has certainly been working with boards around the state for quite some time, and he's here tonight to recognize our district and our Board of Education on this, Board of Education week. By the way, congratulations, and thank you all for all of your hard work and efforts. And so what better way to celebrate that than to have this gentleman here tonight to talk about a great program that's happening in our district, Fast Forward. So we'll bring him up and have him talk from the microphone there. Great.
Well, it's a pleasure being here. It's an honor to be here. New York State School Board started programs like this.
Take a microphone off. Just take it right off the thing there. That way they can hear you on TV land. There you go.
Working? No?
Yep.
Yep, okay. New York State started these programs, and we've changed them up a bit. And this one is the Champion for Change. And what the program was for is that we are not looking for outside people to give nominations for school districts for any particular thing. They decided to do it themselves. We have people who travel, believe it or not, to over 300 school districts in the course of a year. And they have an opportunity to talk to different board members, talk to different superintendents, see different programs, and then they bring those programs back to a committee. I sit on this committee as the co-chair, and there's 15 of us that review all of the nominations that came from our own people, and they're run through our executive director, Robert Schneider, and they pick out the ones that they think are the best. We give out sometimes 20 in a quarter or 25. So, but they're very unique programs, and no one program that we give to mirrors another type of program. So that's kind of how we do it. So on behalf of Peggy Shuntz, who is our president this year, and Robert Schneider, I came up, this is my area, Area 5. I am actually a past president, which is very unique that a past president stays after his 2 years as immediate past president. But there was nobody really interested in running for the position, and I said, well, I'll take it, and I did, and I'm still here. So, and I enjoy it. I really love being around people and the districts and what they do, how they do it. So just a few highlights that I saw here that I wanted to bring out that really makes this an outstanding program and kind of goes to the heart of a lot of things that, I believe in. And one of them is that you're involving a college, and you make that college feel like they're part of your community. And you make the kids see what college life is like or what a college student does. Right now, kids are so far in some districts and areas behind academically that they're having a very hard time catching up. And that's what makes it a struggle for them in class. And I see where these college students can help them in that way. I think a bigger problem is social and emotional for students. I've seen that with my own granddaughter and grandson, trying to start back up, going to in class, in person. Granted, they're both, one is nonverbal autistic and the other is high functioning autistic, but it doesn't matter what they are, they still struggle with the same issues. I had a guidance counselor I was talking to at one time when they first went back and said, you know what? These kids don't even know how to interact with each other anymore because they haven't done it in so long in person that they struggle doing that. So I think this type of program that you guys are putting out there is definitely got to certainly have, an impact on students, both academically and socially. So, I got to commend you as a board for allowing this type of a program to be put on. The person who was running it, I think her name is Jennifer. I don't think she's here tonight, but, she needs kudos for the work that she puts into it and how, it's all structured and done. So, that's my take on this, is that it's a program I haven't seen anywhere else. And I do a lot of traveling around this area. Area 5 goes all the way to Watertown and all the way down to where I live, which is the very southern part on Route 20, West Winfield. So I see a lot of districts, and I, get to talk to a lot of people, and I sit on our local BOCE, so I know the districts and how they're struggling. But this type of program could be put anywhere, and probably should be a role model to other districts of how it's done and what you've accomplished doing this and how you feel it's helped your students emotionally and academically. It's probably hard for the college students because they're not quite sure how to interact with kids that are so much younger than they are, but also, kids that they know need all the help that they can get. And those are special college students that are willing to do this. So again, I want to say congratulations. Thank you for doing such a great program. We have a banner that we want you to display somewhere in your buildings. And it just says, Champion of Change, Oswego City School District Board of Education, your Focus Forward program. And we do these, and they're very durable, because it's a great thing that we feel that if it's displayed in the right place, the people in your district are going to see, hey, our district got an award for something, that they're doing for our students and our staff and everybody else. So again, congratulations to you as a board. Please pass along our congratulations to the program directors and everybody that's involved in it. And just tell them, they're doing a great job. Just keep on doing what you're doing. And I don't think this will be the last one of these you'll see, because I'm betting you guys have got some other programs that you're thinking about or can do that would give you another banner. So thank you very much. And all I need is whoever you want to get a photo with, and then it'll actually go into, I've seen it on Lincoln.com, some of these. So I don't know all where they go at. So we just need a picture of everybody to come up who should be in the picture.
The two of you?
I think we can get, would the whole board like to be in the picture? No? Whoever would like to be in,
No, I think you
we'll
do a
come over
fine
this
job.
way and take a picture.
I don't care wherever you want to take it.
The whole board. Next is the floor to the public. It is expected that speakers will conduct themselves in a civil manner and be ruled out of order for any statement that constitutes a direct threat against officers, employees, or students of the school district, or that is obscene. No personal attacks will be tolerated, nor should any speaker address specific district personnel or students by name or suggestion. Questions or comments concerning matters that are not on the agenda will be taken under consideration and referred to the superintendent for appropriate action. Members of the community may comment on any matter related to the district business. The board president may request a brief description of the topic the speaker plans to address. Any group or organization wishing to address the board must identify a single spokesperson. Presentations should be as brief as possible, and no speaker will be permitted to speak for longer than 3 minutes. First person on the list is Neil Shaw. Mr. Shaw, if you'd come up to the microphone.
Hi, my name is Neil Shaw from Minetto, New York. So I'm going to speak a little bit about the facility fee structure. This past weekend, I attended a youth swim meet in Cahill, New York. Only one Central New York team was missing, the Oswego Lakers Swim Club. This team hasn't been able to be in the water for 7 weeks, apparently locked out of the Oswego High School pool by the district while it figures out its new facility fee structure. In the last 3 weeks, I've also seen a flurry of emails as 2 retired OCSD music teachers frantically looked for rehearsal space for the 60-plus youth orchestra members after being told that their agreement to use space for free at the middle school was being revoked. These are just 2 examples of the impact that the new facility fee structure is having on organizations that in the past have been able to use our taxpayer-funded facilities at no cost. These groups are made up of a majority of OCSD students and for the most part act as a feeder system to support our high school programs, whether they be sports teams, music ensembles, or other clubs and activities. OCSD prides itself on being student-centric, yet it is doing everything in its power to make life difficult for our youth to help them develop their social and emotional skills. Why is it that our district administrators and school board members can't see past dollars and cents, understanding that the school district is part of this community and that its choices impact all of us? What's next? Usage fees to run on our playgrounds? Last year, our district ran a $4.8 million surplus. This surplus came from federal, state, and more importantly, our local tax dollars. If there is a concern regarding costs, there is no reason why some of the funds cannot be redirected to cover the costs of community groups using our facilities, instead of all of it being put to the reserve fund. The Oswego community has always been a strong supporter of the school district. The school budget passes unanimously on an annual basis, and every property owner pays taxes whether they have students who attend Oswego schools or not. Last year's budget also included a significant expansion in our district's administrative staff. Businesses donate without hesitation when asked, and there isn't one member of the community that hasn't bought cookie dough, chocolate bars, hanging plants, or eaten one too many burritos at Fajita Grill to support our students. It is time that the board recognizes this and commits to supporting the Oswego community. Not next month, not next week, not tomorrow, but today. I challenge this board to make a motion tonight to put the current facility fee structure on hold and develop an equitable plan that allows organizations to access our buildings that we as taxpayers have funded immediately and for the foreseeable future. Thank you.
Next is Jennifer Cahill.
Good evening. I'm Jennifer Cahill. I come to every board meeting. I live here in Oswego. I also teach here. I wanted to thank each of the board members for stepping up. I know it's not an easy job being a board member. You get to listen to a lot of suggestions and a lot of things that can be done, and it sometimes can be a very thankless job. But I'm here tonight on behalf of the ACTA. I want to thank you for School Board Week. Thank you for always being here and helping to direct our school district. And I also want to thank Karen Canali. I know tonight is her last board meeting, and I'm sure she's very sad. But I want to thank you also on behalf of the ACTA for always supporting us and helping us, and me personally, always being the first person that I can pick up and call and say, hey, I got this question. So thank you very much, and enjoy the next chapter. Thank you.
Next is William Miller.
That was the gentleman who was there.
Okay.
Didn't need to sign. Okay.
So next on the agenda is the superintendent's report with Dr. Calvin.
All right. Let's see here. So again, want to say good evening, everyone. And I think tonight we'd like to start out with some highlights from the district. So first, I'd like to start out with recognizing our students and our staff as we kind of work through our most recent homecoming week. That week was a lot of fun, lots of things happening throughout the entire district. We had a parade, the Buck Bowl. I'm not sure how many were able to get to the Buck Bowl, but it was just a lot of fun. The girls did a great job. All the students did. We have various contests throughout the district: volleyball, soccer, swimming, and also football. They had a night where they had the Color Wars, or a day rather, on Color Wars, and then the homecoming dance also took place on Saturday. All went well, and again, a great week to bring all of our entire community together and to celebrate another school year, homecoming week. Also, want to just thank our staff for their work that they did around International Walk to School Day on October 12th. Walk to School Day began as a simple idea where children and parents, school and local officials would walk together on a designated day. And it's an energizing event that reminds everyone of the simple joy of walking to school and the health benefits of regular daily of this activity, and the need to make sure that folks are safe when they're walking, or if they end up riding bikes as well. The event focuses on health and safety, physical activity, and concerns for the environment as well. And this year's event was held in collaboration with the Oswego County Traffic Safety Board and other organizations, which included the local police, Oswego Police Department, the Fire Department, the New York State Police, the SUNY Oswego Police, the Oswego County Sheriff's Office, the Oswego County Ambulance Service, and the Oswego County Health Department. They all joined in with our students to walk to school with them. And we had over students participate in this year's event from really two of our schools, Charles E. Riley and KPS, and another 20 to 30 volunteers. So just wanted to highlight both great activities that took place here recently. And so now we're going to switch gears, and we'd like to talk some more now about our study. So I'm going to ask some folks to join us at the table so we can talk this evening. Okay? So, can you hear me okay? Is that working all right? So this evening we want to just share some additional information as it relates to our study and the efficiencies that we're looking at as a district. So we just kind of want to go through and just share a number of things. I left the remote over there, forgive me. So some of the information that we're going to talk a little bit about tonight, we've had a little time to kind of go through and look at. There's some corrections that we'll start out with, but also some of this information is as recent as this afternoon. Amanda and I were out and visiting all of the buildings today. We wanted to look at some spaces and just try to see what we're doing in terms of efficiencies, in terms of how we're using the spaces. So we'll share a little bit of that towards the end of our presentation, okay? All right, so I think first and foremost, just a couple of things we want to make sure that we correct The first piece that we want to just take a look at was we put up a couple charts. And here's the thing, sometimes errors are made, but we want to get it correct. We want to make sure that it's right. So we had some things brought to our attention, and we wanted to just, and we also did some research, and we just want to make sure things are accurate. So the first thing was a chart that was put up around the 2012 enrollment projections from city BOCES. And this was from 2000 up until 2015-16, and the accurate number that you should see, it says during the years of 2001 to 2011-12, the average yearly enrollment decline was 96 students. And then another slide that was up, I believe Pam pointed this out to us here. We had a number up that was, I believe it said 68, if I remember correctly. And this one looked at the 2013 through 23 school year, K through 12 enrollment data. The correction actually should say, and there was an average of 45 students declining each year, per year. And that's from our BEDS data report. Did I miss one? Okay. I'm sorry. And then there's one more here. This one here, from 2001 to 2023, we looked back at the school year student K through 12 enrollment data, and then the average decline per year for all of those years would have been 68. 68 was the actual number. Karen, did you want to share anything about all three of those charts there?
Sure, yes. I apologize for the incorrect numbers the last time. I must have taken some positive and negative numbers and switched the numbers around. But what I wanted to do is also show you that those two prior charts of enrollment from 2001 to 2012 school year, and then from 2013 to 2023, I wanted to give the bigger picture as well. So I took all that data and created a chart, a graph that went from 2001 to 2023, so that you can see over the last 22 years or so, there's been about a 68 student decline each year on average. So some years were a little higher, some years we had added students, but overall, I think you can see the trend from this bigger graph of the decline of students.
So I just have a question, because Jim actually brought it up at the last meeting. Could we at some point get a breakout that's K-6 and 7-12?
Absolutely.
Because we're
Yep.
talking about elementary schools. So I really need to focus on K-6 numbers. 7-12 right now mean nothing to me. Not that they don't mean anything, but we are talking about an elementary school relocating elementary students, K-6, so I want to focus on K-6 numbers. I would love to see a decline in the K-6 area.
Yes.
Not so much to the K-12.
Okay,
Thanks.
yes, we can have that for next time.
Thanks.
Sure. So I just moving forward, because this did come up at our last board meeting, the whole study looks at K through 12. And I know we're talking about the elementary school. So I just want to make sure moving forward, is that all the data that the full board, that you all just want to see is just K-6? We can focus there, and we will provide that data. But the whole study, it does K through 12. And I think looking at it synthetically as well as paring it down are both important, that's my thought. But I just want to make sure we're.
I'd just like to see it comprehensively, because the decision isn't just relative to elementary. It is in this particular decision, but looking forward, additional plans, I think we need to look at the whole thing as well.
Everybody okay? Just want to make sure we're good.
Yeah, so just to clarify, you'll bring the K-6 data, right? So I think that maybe the concern is that if we sort of systemically, maybe we have a lot of students starting in the district and then falling off, as we just want to make sure that it's not the trend that they're sort of bailing out in middle and high school, that we're looking at K-6.
Yeah.
Okay.
And for the purpose of our discussion this evening, we really do focus on K-6. That's where you'll see tonight, just to be clear, okay?
Yeah, I think it's important also, I love data, I love historical stuff, but we're also very much looking at current data, which is one of the things that you spoke many times about, that was very high in the public, and what they wanted to see was that we're looking at current, regular data, right? And so I just think it's important to be looking at that, because when I looked at it as part of the numbers that you gave today, our K through 6 last year was 1801. Now it's 1860. So we've gone up 59 students in K through 6 from last year, according to the numbers that you have yet to present. Sorry to get out of you. But it is important, I'm just saying it, is I do think it's important to be looking at K through 6 in particular for this conversation, 7 through 12 in a bigger sense as we look at everything and should always be looking at everything. And while historical data is important, I think even more so is what are we dealing with currently, and what are we dealing with currently in basis of the amount of teachers and the facilities and the stuff you're about to talk about. So, thank you.
I guess what I need to, and then we'll move forward. I just guess, so we're doing a study. We just completed a study, and a big portion of the study does look at historical data. So as we kind of talk tonight, you are going to, I just want to put a preference there. We are going to talk a little bit about where we were to how we got to where we're at now, I don't know that we can actually go through and have the conversation without looking at historically where we are, where we've been. We will focus this evening for sure for the board on the information that is most current that we have, that we know of, but it's difficult to exclude historical reference from a conversation such as this one. Respectfully.
Right, yeah, well, and I mean, that's correct. I think it's important, and when you see not even a long term, 20 years is actually the short term. Well, it's a short term in terms of looking at like projections of data. But my understanding, and again, we're sort of getting ahead of where you are because we saw a draft of the presentation for tonight, but I mean, to Jim's point, the numbers that you're working with for next year are based on live birth data.
Yes, ma'am.
And those numbers do go up, but we're still able to accommodate shifting. So, I mean, just to make sure we understand, if you can clarify when you put up that data, that's the data you went from, not this year's data.
Absolutely. Okay. All right. Okay. So with that said, I think before we get into some of the data pieces, I think tonight what we start with is the redistricting information, because we did take a look at redistricting. And Tom is here. He's joined us this evening. We spent quite a bit of time sitting together and looking at if we were to have to redistrict, how might that be done? What would be the most efficient and effective way to do that? So, as we approach this work, we approached it with some goals in mind. The first goal was to make sure that we kept as many students as possible in their current schools, wherever possible, that they attend. So we have other remaining schools, and we know we're talking about one school that might have to be repurposed. So we tried to keep as many kids as we could in their school that they're currently in. Another goal was to keep bus rides as short as possible, right? We didn't want kids on buses for hours at a time, okay? The third goal was to keep students who are receiving special permissions in the school that they are currently attending. And we'll talk a little bit about special permissions because it does have an impact on the work that's happening right now in terms of transporting students and getting students back and forth, but also the enrollment in some of our schools. So, one of the things, though, before we move forward, just to let you know that, we did look at the numbers of how many students right now who attend Layton elementary schools actually are bused versus those who are walking. We only have 32 walkers at this time who attend Frederick Layton School. And then the current average bus ride for Frederick Layton students, is approximately 14 minutes at this time. And Tom, I know you pulled all of this data. Any other things you'd like to add to that at all?
No, not at this time.
Okay. So,
I'm sorry, can I just ask, of the, no, never mind.
no problem. So here is the new redistricting map and what it would look like, right? And I'll have Tom just take us through, and we'll look at the present boundary and then the proposed boundary and information that is attached to those. Okay, so Tom, you want to go ahead and share with us a little bit?
You want to go? Sure. For it? Okay. So we'll start out looking at Fitzhugh Park boundary. On the left is the current boundary, and on the right it's a proposed. And although it may be hard to see, the changes to Fitzhugh Park, The north, the south, and the east lines will remain the same. We simply took the border to the west, and we pushed it to West A Street. It travels along Utica Street and would end at West 8th Street. So it's gaining from West 1st to West 8th, where currently it ends at East 1st Street. And then we did some figuring, and the average ride time for the students within this new area would be between 19 and 24 minutes. The next is we'll look at Kingsford Park. There's two changes to this area. If you look on the left, there's a section near the lake, north of Bridge Street, or 104. This is one of the changed sections. So from First Ave until Westlake Road, along 104, we would push the boundary north to the lake. And the second change would take place from West A Street to Hillside Ave, and we would extend the boundary north from Utica Street to Bridge Street. And this basically is including the area around Layton and the high school. So those are the differences. Next, I'm sorry. And the average ride times for these students will be approximately 16 to 21 minutes. Next is Minetto, our biggest area, and we did not touch Minetto at all. Our next is Riley. Again, on the left is our current attendance zone. If you look to the right, we didn't change the main attendance zone at all on the east side. But we did add a small area on the west side, and this area would include West 8th to First Ave, from Bridge Street to the lake. It's only about a quarter of a square mile, but there's almost 100 students that live within this area. And the average ride time for these students going to Riley would be between 17 and 20 minutes. Any questions at all?
So again, our goal was to, if we had to redistrict, what would this look like? What would those lines be like? And that's what it basically looks like. And again, we try to keep to that average for students on the bus, and so you can see what those time frames appear to be, okay, at this time. Now, in terms of student enrollment data, so this next slide deals with K through 12, but then we'll kind of focus moving forward. So in our last meeting, we talked about where we were as of September, and then where we would be, so after Bed's Day in October. So as of October 17th, we give you that information now. Okay, you want to talk a little bit about September and then October?
Yes. At a prior board meeting, we did include the September 2022 enrollment numbers for you. As you can see at that point, with K-12, looking at K-12, not including kindergarten, or not including UPK, we were at 3,514 students. And then I pulled the enrollment this week as of October 17th, and the numbers have changed slightly. Now K-12 is 3,510 students. The difference is because we added 6 students to UPK. 7 students were added K-6. 4 students left the district at grades 7, 8. And then at grades 9, 12, 7 students left the district. So that's the difference, why the numbers have shifted.
Okay, so one of the things that we've heard about on our end is around the whole special permissions piece. So currently in the district, we are allowing special permissions. And basically what happens is if there's a student who has a daycare situation or there's something that's a real emergent issue, they could apply to get special permission to be able to attend a school that is different from their own home school. Now, we have heard from some people that there's a thought out there that this may be causing some of the enrollment issues, a lower enrollment at Layton than what it should be. In some cases, we've heard people say, there may be up to 100 or more kids that are from Layton that have been redistricted to other schools. We've also heard over the last couple months that, a variety of things, that more kids are leaving Fitzhugh and going to other schools around the district, right? That KPS has more of the Fitzhugh students, or maybe some students from Layton, and so everybody's kind of all in one zone or one school here or there. So we wanted to really dive into that to make sure that we were accurate on that. We know that we have over 100 children who are in schools that are not their local schools. So we have just under 100, and Amanda's going to talk about that in just a minute, who are from schools that have special permissions. But we also have some students who are in other schools because there's maybe a special education program in a different building that's different from their neighborhood school. We also have some children who are in other areas because of McKinney-Vento issues, homelessness basically. So when you add it all up, there's definitely over 100, but there's 93 families that we know of that are really affected here. And so in terms of the special permissions police, and some of these have some other children in the household besides just one. So we just wanted to talk this through a little bit because I think it's important for the public to know that what we did not find was that there were hundreds of children from the one school that was going to others. Actually, in no case did we find that. Okay, so I'm going to turn this over to Amanda.
Good evening, everybody. So I'm just going to talk a little bit about how the data chart is set up because it's the same for all of the schools. So in the most left-hand column is the school that we are identifying, and then the number of students, in this case, Frederick Layton has 17 students who have requested to transfer from Frederick Layton School. The middle column gives you the information about where or which schools those 17 students requested to transfer to. And then the right-hand column is a breakdown of the students who have requested to attend Frederick Layton. And then at the bottom there, you'll see the difference between the two. So in this case, at Frederick Layton School, we've had 17 students who have requested to transfer from Frederick Layton to another school, 11 students who have requested to attend Frederick Layton on special permission. And so their enrollment is actually down 6 students as a result of that differential. At Charles E. Riley, we have 27 students who have requested to transfer to another school, and we have 26 students who have requested to transfer into Riley. So they have almost broken even. They're being down just 1 student as a result of the pupil transfer request. At Fitzhugh Park, as Dr. Kelvin referenced, we had the perception that there was a significant number of families requesting to transfer out of Fitzhugh Park. That's actually not the case. We have just 13 families who have requested to attend a school other than Fitzhugh. And also, we have 21 families who have requested that their students attend Fitzhugh Park on special permissions. So their enrollment actually increases as a result of our special permissions. Minetto, we have 21 students who have requested to attend a school other than Minetto, and 11 students who have requested to transfer into Minetto. So their enrollment has decreased by 10 students as a result of special permissions. And then finally, I think that Kingsford Park is also another school that we have heard a lot of information around in terms of requests to transfer in or out, or specifically in. We have had 15 families who have requested to transfer out of the Kingsford Park School, and 24 families who have requested to attend Kingsford Park on special permission. So their enrollment has increased by 9 students as a result.
Any questions about that?
This is actually just more a comment. Thank you for putting all that together. I'm assuming that was all done by hand, by going through those applications? Thank you very much for providing that information. I think it's very useful.
Thank you.
And not only to us, but to the public. I think it is very eye-opening for them to see that whatever rumors are out there, they are rumors. Those numbers totally said it. And thank you, they had to be very tedious. So thank you so very much.
Okay, so now we're going to focus on K through 6 and talk a little bit about elementary class sections and sizes. So at our recent meeting and the meeting prior to that one, we talked a little bit about class sizes and sections. And I just wanted to first start out the conversation by talking a little bit about what's happening regionally. So we did do some research. We wanted to kind of see, what's happening in the region. So we contacted all of the superintendents from the districts that you have here, and we kind of, we got answers from them as to what their class sizes are looking like K through 6 at this particular time. We not only wanted to look in the region in terms of our Oswego County School District, but also we looked at schools that we compare ourselves to. So, when we're doing work, we often compare ourselves to Central Square, Fulton, East Syracuse, Manoa, because the size, right, and there's similarities to our district. So we did take a look at all of those. And what we found when we asked them about what are your class sizes at? What is your average class size? What are you doing? So most of the superintendents right away said to me, we can have generally our maximum number that we don't go past is 25, right? And I think Mr. Pohl explained that contractually in our contracts, we do have 25 as our limit as well. So it wasn't surprising. It's actually pretty common amongst folks in our region that they try not to go past 25. There are sometimes anomalies that we heard about. For example, at one district, ESM, it depends at the middle school level, right? What the extra class might be. It may be a music class or an art class, and so you could have up to 30 children in those classes, depending on what it is that's happening. But here's what we found. So when we looked at Central Square, you can see the numbers. K, the average class size is 20, grades 1 through 3, 22, grades 4 through 5, 25, and then grades 6, 23.7 right now. Fulton, and he did explain and gave me a disclaimer that there is one school in the district that's has a lower enrollment, similar to kind of what we have, and then there's others, right? But the average at K is 23, at K and 1, 22 through 24 right now, second through fourth, is 21, 21, and then 22 at grade 4, grade 5 and 6, 21 and 24. ESM, so they have a range that they offer between 20 and 22 right now for K through 5. But the superintendent said, for most cases, it's around 21. And she said we should put the 21 number in parentheses, which is what we did here. At grade 6, 23 to 25, but again, some classes, as I just explained, could go up to 30. And then we kind of looked at our median, and I think we had that up there before, and then our average as well. We put both there for this evening. And you can see our numbers at K, the median was 15. The average is 15. Grades 1, 18, average of 19. Grade 2, 18 and then 18. Grade 3, 19 and 19. Grade 4, 20 and 19, median and an average of 19. Grade 5, 18 to 19. And grade 6, 21 to 21. So when we kind of compare ourselves to those other 3 districts, we are actually below in some cases, or at, or close to kind of where they're at, right? But most are a little bit higher than where we're at. Now, we had districts from the county that are smaller than our district, and we saw at least one had numbers that were higher, and then several others had numbers that were less. Now, one of the things that each of those superintendents pointed out to me very clearly was that they haven't set like a range. They haven't said, hey, we want to do 18 to 19 or 17 to 20. What they have is basically who's come in the district, right? So, for example, like APW, it has one elementary school. So some of the numbers, for whatever reasons, are a little bit higher, but you can see what their numbers look like. And then Phoenix, Hannibal, Pulaski, Sandy Creek, again, it's based on who just enrolls. When I asked a number of my colleagues, did anybody have a conversation about, what you'd like to set goals around class sizes? I did not hear that is happening as common practice. What I've heard is no, again, we try to make sure we stay under the contractual limit, which is at 25 at this time. So, when we kind of look at where we're at compared to everybody else, our sizes are not larger than everybody else's. Our sizes are actually less than pretty much everyone else in the region at this time. Okay. Now, we did also go back through and look at, the class sizes in the current sections that we have right now. So I'm going to have Dr. Humphrey talk a little bit about where we're at right now and then some scenarios that we ran. Okay.
So at the last board meeting, we displayed this chart up there for September 22, 23, current class sections and current class sizes as of September. So this data that you're looking at has 100 total sections, K6 in all five, total within all 5 elementary buildings. So then, using this as like our base, the next 4 scenarios actually takes in consideration the boundary changes that Tom presented a few minutes ago. So it's taken all that student information, where those students are currently living, and it's placing those students in what would be their new school catchment areas. So the following 4 scenarios would look at Riley, Fitzhugh, Kingsford, and Minetto, and not Layton. So we can understand with Tom's new boundary proposal where the students would actually go to school, and then what the sections, what each section would, how many sections would be there, and how many students would be in each grade level. So scenario 1.
If I could just before,
Yep.
just a reminder, so Mr. Pohl, if you recall, in the study, he suggested that we go down by 11 sections, which would bring us down to 89. But you'll see that we, in some scenarios, we were either there, lesser, or we did not go to that level in some scenarios, okay?
Yeah.
Go ahead.
Thank you. So looking at scenario 1, what scenario 1 does is it looks at kindergarten having 18 students per section, grades 1 through 2 having 20 students per section, and grades 3 through 6 having 23 students per section. So looking at the enrollment, like this would be for next year, it would be 87 sections total with those 4 buildings. Does that chart make sense? Do you want me to further explain it?
No, it does, but can I put another vision on it? Okay, so I can see if we do all the math, grades 3 through 6 are 26 students per section, okay? If I do Riley, 3rd grade, the average is 27 students per section. If I do Riley, 4th grade, it's 27 students per section average. 5th grade is 26. Minetto, 6th grade is 26. So those are all even over the 25 number you were referencing earlier, let alone, I'll just say again, contractual numbers are different than pedagogical numbers. But just to put those numbers on this chart into reference, there's 27, 27, 26, and 26, and 25. Oh, Minetto 4th grade's 25. So, yes, the average is 23, but there's a lot of classrooms that are busting at the seams, in my opinion.
Okay, so that's scenario 1.
Yeah. In scenario 2, we looked at grades K through 2 having 18 students per section, and grades 3 through 6, 23 students per section. In that scenario, there would be 90 sections across the 4 elementary buildings.
The only difference is the K through 2, right? So the 3 through 6 remains where, Riley 3rd grade has 27 students. So all those numbers that I gave before also apply to this scenario for 3 through 6.
Well, I'm going to let us finish the whole presentation, then we can go from there. Okay.
Can I just ask one question about
Sure.
scenario 2? So the legend at the top is that you've set the cap at 18 and 23, or that's the average of 18 and 23?
That was the average.
That's the average, yes. So there could be a class that potentially has 19 students. There could be a class with 18 students.
Okay, scenario 3.
Scenario 3 is grades K2, 20 students per section, and grades 3, 6, 23 students per section. In that scenario, there is 83 sections total.
I'm just on a roll, so I'll keep doing it again. 3 through 6 is a little bit different. It's not as bad. I'll just point out here, every single kindergarten in all 4 buildings averages 23. So that means, the average is 68 divided by 3. That's 23 kids in every kindergarten
So if
on
you-
average.
If you just let us finish,
Okay.
then we're gonna go back and add. Sure. So let me just add in here, right? So with these, we brought them down with the averages. However, like when we got to the last slide, what I was gonna share with you is that we can actually add in a couple more. Like this one goes to 83. We know that we can add in a couple more sections to those. And then what our plan is that in the, each year, we would take one section at a time. So maybe we just do the next slide, and then I can come back and talk more about that, okay? Go ahead. Oops, sorry about that.
So in scenario 4, for grade K, we looked at 18 students per section. And then in grades 1 through 6, 20 students per section, with a section total of 96 students. And as we continue to look at enrollment decline trends, even with these scenarios moving forward, the sections over time could continue to decrease.
So what we know that happens each year, if you go through the study, he talks about loss of students, right? So there is a ratio that's put in there, and you have a certain amount of loss per year. Does that make sense? Even though you have a number that you started with this year, you have a ratio amount that you lose in the future, okay? And so we looked at these, and we said, okay, we think we can do 3 sections or 4 sections. We may have a couple here, a couple extra here or there, but we also tried to include that loss ratio piece as well, which is how we came up with those pieces there. And if you look at, for example, scenario 3, scenario 4, one of the things that we thought about was we don't believe it's best to go with the numbers that he talked about, which was taking 11 different classes out. We think we would start more with like 4 or 5, watch the data each year, and then take one class away if we need to after the next year if there are issues that we see around enrollment. So we gave you some preliminary numbers, right? And these are lower numbers, some are higher numbers. But we know that we can work with, as we look at that ratio of loss that comes in, we believe that basically what we'll see is lesser numbers than what we have right now. Each year, we start the year out thinking we're going to get the number that we had for the previous year, but we see that there are changes that happen back and forth, basically. Okay. You look like you have a question. Go ahead.
Well, so in scenario 3, and you just may have misspoken, you said the study talked about a reduction of 11 sections.
They talked about 11, yes.
Right?
And ours.
So in your first slide of where we are right now, 23, we're at 100 sections total,
Yes.
right? So scenario 3 reduces by 17 sections,
That is correct.
Yeah.
right? Okay, so that's far beyond the 11 that's,
That is
okay,
correct,
right.
right. We'd add a couple more back in, but go ahead, yes.
Yeah, so in addition to looking at these numbers by some of the sizes, number 3 in my mind, number 4 in my mind, gets us the closest to status quo, but it still ups us a little bit, right? But I will say a couple things here, or actually, I'll start with a question. You used 1,826 students. We currently have 1,860. Is that just, you believe we'll lose 34 students from this year to next year, K through 6?
Yes, so that had to do with, if I remember correctly, you want to share about that? Go ahead.
Yep, that had to do with the continuation of the decline that we're experiencing within the district. And then what it would be as well is it's taking our current student population and then bumping them up to the next grade level.
Right, so, as part of this, and this is one thing where, Dr. Calvin, I'm really happy that you talked about fluctuations, because we also have to look at this study, if we're using some of this study and the historical to look at projections. So to give a couple numbers that I gave before, but to reiterate, last year, K through 6, 1801. This year, 1860. So we're plus 59 K through 6 versus last year. The study we did by Costello predicted that this year we would actually have 1,743 according to their study. I think it's figure 5.2, I think. So instead of 1,743, we actually have 1,860. So they were off by 117 seats. I'm sorry, that's college. 117 students. Sorry, at college we think about number of seats in a class. When we look at the model we had, which Dr. Calvin talked about, projects loss, they were off by 117, which out of 1,800 students is a pretty decent percentage. If you look at the different classes, and I can pass this around if people are actually interested, they predicted first grade would have 227 this year. Your number that you presented here as 300. They were off by 73 students out of 300 that we currently have. So I caution us to think not only about the raw numbers we have, but also predictions are mathematical. They have problems written into them, and we need to really understand where they're coming from and how to use the data to the best of our abilities. And again, it's about looking at it in a different light. So when I look at the numbers, I'm thinking we're up 59 from last year, and their prediction was off 117. I'm nervous that we're looking at declines that may not be here yet to the point of what we're talking about.
Just keep in mind that when they presented, I think it was a couple meetings ago, and we talked about the number of students who 2 years ago parents chose to move to a homeschool, and then last year and this year returned to regular traditional school. So I think that was 50-something.
Yep, and there was a
So
bit-
that
there's a
might
bit
have
of
been a bit of the swing between last year and this year.
Right. And thank you very much, because I brought in a lot of times when we've discussed this, looking at the 2 and 3 years, when we're looking at projections, if those 2 to 3 years were seriously impacted by COVID, they're going to really throw off future projections. It's just the way math works. You put it in, and the next calculation builds on the next, and the next calculation builds on the next. And if you're a fraction off in the beginning, it compounds itself as you work through the data set. So,
Yeah, and I agree with that, and that's actually where I think the historical data is useful, that we can see over the much longer term that it's still a decline. But I do appreciate that you, I think scenario 4 takes a very conservative approach, right, with only cutting 4 overall sections, which I think leaves us some wiggle room in case the projection for next year is more, or not the projection, in case the actual for next year. You're not going by the projection number, you're going by the actual plus who we're anticipating for kindergarten to begin. So, yes, I guess I like scenario 4.
And actually, our suggestion would have, is scenario 4. And if you just kind of go through and you'll see, let's just take grade 6, right? Because I know you were adding up what does the actual class section look like. Grade 6, 18 at Charles E. Riley, 21 at Fitzhugh Park School, 21 at KPS, 17 at Minetto, right? Great. That scenario, I think, is best for us. I think also, looking at some of those numbers, you're never going to, one of the things I want to be clear about is, so we're trying to do our best guesstimate, because who knows what happens from year to year. You may have a group of kids come in one year, and then you may not have a group of kids come in, right, that you thought would be there. This allows us some wiggle room, right? So if we went with 96 sections, we can take it one step at a time, right? We know that at least if we went down 4 sections, we would be okay, right, in terms of the class sizes. And then each year, you can take it one step at a time. We see what happens in terms of the enrollment for the next year, and then we go from there, right? If we see a huge dip, then we take it down a section. If there's more than if there's enough for 2, then we even consider that as well, but we take it one step at a time rather than trying to do all of it all up front. I think the 11 is just too aggressive, to be quite honest with you. Does that make sense to everybody? Okay. Yes, please. Hi.
Student rep has
Yes.
So earlier you mentioned a cap of 25 students. So when you're like focusing on these scenarios, are you still trying to keep a cap at 25 in the
Absolutely.
classes?
Yes, we are. We are not. So again, as I said, like just with the grade 6 that I just read off, none of those are at 25. The highest is at 21, right? So we're trying to keep it definitely, really, as you look at this scenario, as close to grades 1 through 6, 20 per section as we can, and at grades K, 18. Okay. Does that help? Does that answer questions? Okay.
And again, grade K in these scenarios is an estimate, right? It's based on the number that, that the Costello and Silky team had estimated for next school year.
Right. Okay. So, and then, again, another grade, you can look at grade 4, and you have some grade levels at 20, some grade levels at 16 in terms of averages, if you kind of looked at that. Okay, all right. Any other questions on that scenario? Yes, any other questions? Okay, so go ahead.
At the beginning, you said you were going to talk a little bit about the space?
Yes. Yep.
So
Talk
we
about
can.
space now.
Okay.
So, do we think that we can get the numbers between 18 and 20? We think we can, or as close to that as we can. Again, keeping in mind that's less than what's happening mostly across the region. And then in terms of building usage information, so today, as I shared, Amanda and I, we went through every building, and we looked at every instructional space. And we looked at how the space was supposed to be used, and then how it's actually used. One thing that I would like to say about our principals, they've done a great job at making sure that those spaces are used in some way, fashion, or form. They're good with that. Like they make sure that no space is just sitting there unless there really is no need for it at that particular time. We saw maybe 2 places where there just weren't people in office spaces. Basically, everybody had a space, and so there were. One was a suite in one building. The other, I think in that same building, had another classroom that was just empty. And then in another place, we saw another, a smaller classroom that was just empty as well. Because everybody's got a place to be at, basically. All right. So here's what we found. So in terms of the building usage information, we went to each school and we'll go one school at a time. So currently in KPS, we have 21 sections there. And what we found in terms of spaces that could be used for classrooms, we found that we had between 27 and 29, right? Really, the answer is, the number that we saw was 29. So there was 2 extras in there that probably I would differ from what the principal would say, and that's okay, right? But my thought was 29, but we're going to go with 27, that number. And so the classroom numbers that were available were 6. In FPS, we have 22 sections currently there. And again, between the 27 and 29, I went with the lowest number, and that still gave us 5 extra available spaces. And Frederick Layton School, we have 14 classroom sections there now, 19 places that could actually be used for a full classroom. And that gave us 5 available spaces. In Minetto, we had 22 classrooms, sections right now, but we had 32 available spaces there, which actually gave us 10 additional instructional spaces that could be used for classrooms. Now, also in Minetto, for those of you who took a tour with us through Minetto, if you recall, when we went through like the hallway areas, there were these larger areas that could be used for gathering spaces. They could be made into additional classrooms. So there was a lot of space. I think in that building, probably most of the other ones that we saw, for the most part.
KPS and Fitzhugh Park also have upstairs.
Yes,
Sections.
we saw that too.
could be designed as offices to move out some folks who are currently occupying full classrooms as offices.
Right.
So.
Yeah. So outside of like the sixth grade wing, if I remember correctly, I think it was that sixth grade wing at Fitzhugh Park, and I think it's the fifth grade wing at KPS. There are spaces, instructional spaces. They're being used to do groups and whatever in the hallway, but those, you could definitely build walls and you could have AAS spaces and release some of the classrooms that are being held right now by one person for, you could have a whole classroom in that space, basically, and make those offices instead. Put the walls up and make those offices instead.
Mathis? I'm sorry, I just had a question. So the number you have here for classrooms available at Minetto does not include those potential spaces, the open spaces, so they will be additional on top of that?
That's correct, yes.
Okay.
And by the way, we did not touch art, PE, music spaces, AIS rooms. We didn't even, we saw some AIS rooms that we said that could be a classroom, and so they were included here. But the art, the music, the PE, all those things, we didn't even, we left those as is, right? But these were the additional places that we saw. And for example, in one building, we saw one service provider in the room. Another one had just two in the room, but the space was completely, basically, there was just one table. The room was basically empty. Okay. In Charles E. Riley, we had 21 current sections there now. We had space available for 30, which gave us 9 additional spaces. So when you pulled it all together, the total classroom spaces that we saw available were 35 classrooms, right? And I think that kind of speaks to where we are K through 6, right? And not surprising, because our buildings were built for 5,000 plus kids or more than that, basically. But now, as you see the numbers going down, the space is in, we have 1 or 2 people in the spaces, but the spaces are generally, they don't have full classrooms in them, right? That, when I look at a number like that one, that I think lends itself to why there would be a concern about maintaining or holding on to another site, right? Because you have basically across the district right now, you have a whole school, basically, when you look at 35 places, that's how much space there is. And again, I congratulate our principals, I thank them. They are using the spaces for something, where they can, they're trying. But, you have 1 or 2 people in many of these spaces. Okay. Any questions on that before I go to the next site?
I just want to clarify again, your current sections are the K through 6 classes.
Yes, that is correct.
And then the classrooms available, that's not, you didn't touch music, you didn't touch
ma'am.
art, phys ed, obviously. But in those classrooms available, AIS wasn't touched either, AIS reading, AIS math, and they're not like doubled and tripled up into a room, because I think that's not really conducive to an AIS environment, because I think the distraction that happens is,
Yeah, we're with you 100%.
They need the least amount of distractions as possible.
Right.
AIS in a hallway is just
No,
not
we don't-
acceptable.
No, I agree. We did not see any AIS rooms in the hallway. We did see a couple rooms that had 2 providers in them. But in those scenarios, we looked around to see, are there other spaces that an AIS person could be relocated to?
That's what you're saying, in these available
Correct.
is part of that.
Well, so no, we had other spaces. Correct, right. Yes, ma'am. That we did not include, and we didn't include them in those 35, right? So we found, so in AIS, and I know we have some AIS folks here with us tonight, people who work in that area. So, they have groups of kids. Some of those groups they could be groups of 1 or 2, they could be groups of 5 or 6. Now we're doing team time across the district as well, so they could have a group a little bit bigger than that. But we did, we looked at spaces, and I'm thinking of 2 or 3 schools right now off the top of my head where one room is completely empty. There's no one even in the room. We saw a whole suite in one of our schools. It had 2 classroom spaces that could be used for AIS groups very easily, totally empty. The staff are, in a room by themselves or with someone else, but easily somebody could have been relocated to a different space. So they use the bigger space, right? Because it's there. Nobody's there. So we use it, right? Yeah, right? Okay.
So if I may, just
ahead.
real quick, and I will completely say, thank you for walking around and doing all that, because it is what we're doing today. Because when you sent this shortly before the meeting, so I only had a chance to glance at some of this now, but it really related to me because the Costello report, tables 7, 3, 4, and 5, they specifically talk about, they went to the principals and they said, what are you using this room for? So when I look at 7.4 for Fitzhugh, there were only 9 full-size rooms that were used, 2 for AIS, 2 for music, 1 for art, 1 OTPT. So it's good that we're getting some up-to-date information on that because this may not be as relevant right now. But I do have a question of, have you yet spoken with the principals as you went through this?
They went
with you today?
They went with us all together today, right?
Great, thank you.
And, I would say, yes, they walked the hallways with us, every single one of them. We went to every single room, and we didn't miss one room, and we talked to them. We had several principals who just said to us, well, this is a classroom. You could really use this as a classroom. Like, we didn't even have to ask. One of the principals actually gave us a whole list and said, these are at least, I think there were 7.
She highlighted her map and said these could all
Be-
be full-size student classrooms.
Yeah. So, we didn't even have to ask in many cases. They just showed us where it was. So there's nothing like actually physically going and seeing it for yourself to make sure, and that's what we did. So I think, again, the point we're trying to make is that, all of these spaces, they cost us to clean them, to keep them upkeep with them, to make sure that, whomever is in there has the right space. And we do that, and I think we do a good job at that. But again, there's 35 of them right now extra, which is the size of a school. Okay. So the only other thing I wanted to just talk, did you want to add anything? I'm sorry, I hope I didn't leave you out. Okay. The only other thing I wanted to just talk a little bit about was there's 2 more things. One is the repurposing options for Frederick Layton School. So we had some community members who have said to us, and I think it was in the survey, if I remember correctly, the thought exchange that was just done, we had people who said, what are you going to use the space for if we had to repurpose Layton, right? So I've shared with every group that I've spoken to that really is a final decision that rests with the board, right? I don't want to say that it will for definite be this way or that way. Are there ideas out there? Yeah, there are some ideas that we might have, and they include but are not limited to, continuing for sure to utilize the space for athletics, right? Because we do need that space, part of that space for athletics, for public meetings, and we have a wing at our offices. The relocation of preschool programs. So one of the things that we have talked about as an administrative team is trying to bring all of our preschool program students into one space. So why do that? So what we have come to understand is that it's kind of a first come, first serve basis, right? You sign up with the folks who run the preschool, and we don't run it. There's an agency that does that. And you get in where there's room at, right? So there are a number of students who don't get in at their neighborhood school. Some kids do, but it's kind of really a first come, first serve basis. So there are children who go to the program, and they may be, they live in, let's say, Kingsford Park area, but their program that they got into was maybe a Layton program. And then Layton, by the way, has a full-time one, and then several others have part-time. So it's kind of, you sign up and you get in wherever you get in. So what's happening is the next year, students are, a great number of those students are having to transition back to where they're actually their neighborhood schools. Some ask for a special permission to try to stay in the school that they've started preschool at. So, the goal, when you think of this type of a program, what you'd like to do is have as many of those kids, go to a preschool program in the neighborhood school as possible so they can get used to the staff and, the rituals and the routines. But that really isn't the case that we kind of see as we look deeper into this. So one of the things our thought is let's bring them all together. One, because it brings everybody under the same roof to get the same experiences. Two, also, just to back up a moment, we also have a concern. The concern is that the transportation for the students, because you sign up and you get in wherever you get in at, we could have a student living in Minetto who needs to be transported. They only get transported, by the way, one way, but they may need to be transported from Minetto to Layton, or they could be in KPS and they need to be transported to Charles E. Riley. So it creates some logistical issues and real inefficiencies across the board around preschool. So one of the things that we thought about is it might be more efficient and also programmatically better to bring everyone together. And then Tom's team can transport everybody from one site rather than going here and there all over. It's pretty busy, basically. Go ahead.
So Mathis, I know we don't run the preschool, but there's a hard number that they allow in each year?
Yes. It's
So we have
dependent
some
upon-
students that don't get into preschool?
Some kids don't. Most kids who apply generally get in for the most part, right? If they make application in enough time and they put their info in and there's enough funding available for those programs each year, most people who apply usually, for the most part, get in.
All right, I guess I'm a little confused. So if there's, all right, there's a hard number, so not everybody gets in. So then there's a hard number that can attend preschool at Fitzhugh. There's a hard number that can,
Right. There's only so many spots at each
Gotcha.
place. So, you may get in, but you may not get your school
Right,
of choice.
because all the spots in that school are filled.
Correct, right?
Thank you.
Yeah, so Layton is a full-day UPK program. New York State only allows 16 students in that program. The other elementary schools, we have 2 half-day programs, one in the morning, one in the afternoon. The max we are allowed to have in those programs is 18 students per class. So say, for example, Layton gets full. So 16, we reached our max. Then a student would have to, if their parent wants them to still go to UPK through the district, then they would have to go to the next building that has an opening.
Shame on New York State.
It's also a problem that it's only half a day. And by half a day, that's 2.5 hours.
Yes, shame on New
Yeah.
York State.
So, one of the ideas was bring preschool all together under the same roof, right? It would certainly bring everyone together. We'd be able to provide support in that one site. And then the transportation, a lot more efficient, a lot more effective district-wide. We need space for tutorial services. We have very limited space for that. So right now, we are experiencing some challenges with providing tutoring for students. Our libraries and places, around the community, they don't want to provide those spaces for tutoring like we used to do. Not that they're trying to do anything wrong, but, sometimes there are challenges, sometimes there are not. And those spaces, many of them were not intended to be the tutoring place for the district, right? So we know that we could use some extra spaces, right, to be able to tutor students who are suspended. And we do have elementary and secondary students who receive tutoring services from us. The next thing is, we would love to see an expansion in program. We'd love to see, some alt-ed types of supports in place. I know the district has thought about doing this before, has looked at doing this before. We send a lot of alt-ed students out. It would certainly give us some space to be able to do some work like that in one of our locations. We have very limited to really almost no space to provide professional development in right now. We have these other rooms that we talked about, but they have people in those rooms right now, so we'd have to displace somebody so that we can provide professional development. But to really provide PD right now for our staff, we have to shut down the library or a cafeteria or a gym. So we certainly could use some space for that. The district could consider or think about renting out spaces for local service providers or educational organizations that might be looking for space. And we know that there are definitely service providers and educational organizations that are looking for spaces to utilize. This would certainly be something that we could see benefiting the district, bringing people closer to where we are, basically. And then also, we have a Learning Layton partnership, so we would certainly look to continue that partnership. In that space, in Frederick Layton School, there's a room that there's professional development, and there's a classroom that's taught there in the room, and then students go out into our classrooms around the district, and they do work with our kids, basically. So these are just some ideas that you could certainly use this space for in terms of repurposing of the space. And we think we can certainly do a number of these items here. Any questions on that at all, board? Yes.
So even if like the preschoolers were moved to Layton, you wouldn't be able to expand the class size numbers. So what would the benefit of that be?
So again, just going back again, so the class size numbers are determined by the state, right? But the benefit would be we bring all of the children together rather than having them one group in this school, one group in that school, right? Bring them all together, get all the services together all under one roof. We think that will help to hopefully provide some consistency, right? It also gives us a space where we can come to, most of the children go to the preschool, they end up coming to our schools. So rather than having our staff travel here, there, all over, they all can come to one place, get a chance to see the students, get a chance to know them before they actually come into our schools, basically. So that would help to provide some good transition for our students. And then the other thing is so as I shared earlier, we're not as efficient with our transportation system around transporting these students, because right now we'll go to Monetto and we'll have 2 or 3 that needs to go to Layton, or we go to Layton and there's 2 or 3 that needs to go up to Charles E. Riley, and it's just, am I saying this correctly? Anything else you want to add to that at all?
I would just say that if we did create a central location with proper bell times, the buses are already out. It could be an efficiency savings if we did it that way. So.
All right. Any questions on that at all, board, in terms of purpose? Okay. So, in terms of thoughts for the future, for future consideration, as we shared in our previous presentation, our student needs are continuing to grow. The thing is that we would certainly like to expand program if it would be possible. There are things that we'd like to add to our program. The concern is that we're stretched trying to provide for 5 different elementaries. And if we could consolidate or bring some things together, it might allow us the opportunity to be able to expand with respect to some of our programming. I think, I want to thank the board for at least hearing the information that we have to share. I know that this is not easy to do, having done this work before. At the end of the day, what we're looking at, we were 5,000 plus students before, and the district is now down to 3514. Well, we lost 4 of those students, right? So, we're down. I think this graphic is the real big concern, but I also think it's that we want to keep our eye on, the 35 kids. With the class size, the only other caveat I would add is that, we certainly want to be careful. The lower we go, we need to keep in mind that also has implications as well. So, when you have a class size of 15, keep in mind things like we have students with, disabilities who attend or are included in a number of our classrooms. So there has to be a proportion of the children in the classroom who are gen ed students in those settings and a portion who have disabilities. So the smaller that number is, right, the more you have concerns around disproportionality. So we have to kind of be careful with respect to that and keep your eyes on that. I think the only other thing, too, is that as we kind of think through this work, I think we have to make sure also, because I've had a lot of people say to me this past week, it's class size, class size, class size. We understand. I think at our last meeting I said, all of us have been teachers in classrooms before. We don't want to look to just make class sizes huger and larger. We understand that. But I think it's important to make sure that we include in the conversation that there's more than just class size that we need to keep in mind. It's also quality of instruction, right? So yeah, class size might have an impact, yes. But there's also I think the quality of the instructor that's in front of our students, the materials that we use to teach in the classroom, the professional development that we offer to the teachers and our folks, right? All of those things matter too. It's not just the number, because we look at those districts that I showed you before, right? Many of those districts, they have numbers that are higher than ours. And if class size was the only thing that mattered, right, some of them would be having real issues. Some of them have some issues, some of them don't. I think the point I'm trying to make is class size, is it something that we definitely need to keep in mind? It is. But there are other quality indicators that are very important too. And I think at the end of the day, what we're trying to do is add to the quality, see what we can do to add more for our students wherever we possibly can. STEAM, STEM, robotics, whatever the programs are that our students need, that's what we're trying to, if this were to happen, that is where we would be trying to work through. And I think, unless there's anything else from anybody else from up here, at our next meeting, we will come back. You asked us for numbers, specifically K through 6. Are you looking for the 20 years frame or how 10 years worth? 7 years? Okay. We'll go back 7 years. We'll find that for you.
Is there any way you can get the live births for the last 2 years? Because the Castillo Silky didn't, it was like 2019, I think, was the last.
No, they do have a chart in there.
Is it? Okay. I don't
It's
have
right
that
in the
one
chart
with me.
there.
I would
Like
love to
this
see that, but-
upcoming school year, I think the number was 274, if I remember correctly, Karen?
It was 270, for this coming school year for incoming kindergartners, it was 272.
Yeah. So I can show you the page in the I'll get that for you.
I want the live bursts in Oswego, New York in 2020 and 2021, because I think that's some data that might be a little bit important to us, the last
Sure.
current years through a pandemic. I think that might have increased things. And I also the new Micron plant is only 30 minutes south of here, and that's for the next 20 years. I don't want to be cutting us off at the knees.
Yeah.
It's just, those are a couple quick areas I'm a little nervous about.
Right. And Pam, I can tell you that our chief schools officer group, we met around that plant. We wanted to kind of learn as much as we could, and how might that affect us here in this area of central New York. I wish I had, right, I wish I was able to do that, but I can't. I can tell you what we have learned is that there were, the area is not close by. It is, like you said, there's a short drive. Well, I wouldn't call it, some people would say short, some people would say not. But what we, right. There are what we know is that some of the people who are going to come and get these jobs, some are coming from other states and other countries. We know that some of the jobs, there'll be hopefully jobs here in terms of in the Hidalgo County area. We hope that we know that there'll be some jobs there. I wish that I heard at the meeting that there will be a lot that will come to our county. Right now, it's very uncertain. What we're hearing is that many of the folks may be in I believe it's the Central Square, the Clay, the Syracuse, North Syracuse School District is the one that's really hearing a lot about it because of the location. We don't have a crystal ball, so we don't know, and I hate to project, but we're not hearing the best of news that there will be a ton of the jobs that will come here, you know. And I know that there's others, there are meetings coming up, and we plan to be there to just hear, but we have not, right, as of yet. And it's 2 years out before anything even happens, so we don't know.
And then it's
Yeah,
another 20 years beyond that.
that's
But
correct, so.
We are here to look at the future also.
Right. The neat thing is, though, Pam, if the board were to select, right, if the board chose to repurpose Layton, the one thing that is a benefit is that there isn't this talk about getting rid of the building, right? The talk is repurposing. So if something were to go, and you had to go back, you still have that as an option, that you could always go back and bring a building back if you need to. So that's a plus, if the board chose to go down that route, okay?
Can I make an alternate point about, just an alternate point about Micron? Mr. Lanigan and I spoke about this when we met last week in terms of what we would look for an opportunity to do is to meet from representatives from the company, and all districts will be looking to do that, to see what we need to do to prepare our students to become employees of that system. But we need efficiency and programs and resources to be able to do that. So when we talk about the opportunities that we're seeking for students, it's going to take expanded resources and programming for us to be able to prepare our students to take those jobs.
Just real quick here, so Pam, you asked for 7 years. If you asked for 7 years of the K through 6, can I just say 10, please? Only because 6 years are already in Costello. So I mean, we've already have 6 years plus this year. We actually have 7 years already. And that was one of the things I talked about, going back a little further, because if you do pre-COVID, 1948, 1943, 1998, we were actually steady growing the 4 years pre-COVID, K through 6. So I think it'd be helpful to go back before Costello, just as a point.
And we do have, I mean, I think the board also has some of that data. We'll look it up, we'll go back. I think if you remember, I sent you all of the reports. And there's one report, I believe the BOCES did that report, and it had, I think, we'll double check, but I think it had the numbers in there. So I'll double check, I'll look at that. And if we can't, then we'll have to go and search through the beds data and try to see if we can go back and see the numbers. We'll check to see.
All right.
Do you think we?
Yeah, I think a lot of it, when you're talking about the other former studies, a lot of it was already captured in those studies. So we'll start by looking at those former studies, and then if we have to pull from the beds data, we'll pull from that as well.
And my only other comment was just maybe to save you time or us confusion. With the live birth data, I believe I remember either reading in here or maybe asking at the last meeting about why we didn't have more up to date, and it was because the data they presented in their report was live birth data, not for Oswego County, but for households in the Oswego City School District. So it was really, I believe, purposed right to us. So while we may be able to get our hands on more recent county data, it's really the number of students born into the school district that I think is the more relevant number. And I think, again, I have to look back, but I think that's the one Costello used. Costello?
Yeah, it's in this, there's a whole chart there, right there.
I can look at it.
Okay.
I have it at home. I'll look.
All right. If you don't, just let us know. We'll search,
I'll look.
okay?
I can look. I don't need to do the extra work there.
No worries.
I don't mind looking.
Okay. So the last thing I have to say is just, all right, so at our next meeting, we'd like to bring back information around our community focus group. So we, as you know, we had to reschedule that group, and we are still looking for some participants. We've had more people who have applied to be a part of the group. So it is our hope that we'll get that piece up and able to run. And then we will also bring back at our next meeting, building condition survey information. I think that's also information that you definitely need to know in terms of what still needs to be done, what are the conditions of the building, and what are future costs looking like in terms of that as well. Okay. Is there any other questions at all from the board? Okay. Thank you for your time. We appreciate it.
Next on the agenda is the consent agenda, items A through C. If I could have a motion.
I'll make the motion.
Second?
I'll second it.
Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Next is curriculum with Karen Humphrey.
Letter A under curriculum for your approval.
Item A, could I have a motion, please?
Move it.
Second?
I'll second it.
Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Next is personnel with Robert Syracuse.
Good evening. We'll start off with item A. It's a support staff retirement. We have Therese Chuago. She's a nurse at KPS, and that's as presented.
Items A, motion, please.
Move it.
Second?
I'll second.
Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
Item B, that's a non-affiliate recommendation. It's as presented. It's Diane Schrader. This is for our secretary to the superintendent and district clerk.
Items B, could I have a motion, please? Second?
A second.
Any discussion?
Can I just say something, Board? So Mrs. Schrader is here this evening. She comes to us by way of Oswego, SUNY Oswego. She works right now in the alumni area there and has been there for a number of years. And also, Mrs. Schrader has students who've gone through our district, lives in our district, and is very familiar with our district. So we're just really excited to welcome her and want to say welcome. Provided we get voted on, I think we will. But, okay. Thank you. Right.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
Welcome aboard.
Item C through E, professional staff, as presented.
Items C through E, could I have a motion?
Move it.
Second?
I'll second it.
Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
Items F through K, support staff recommendations as presented.
Items F through K, could I have a motion? Second?
Second.
Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
Items L through N, extra compensatory position recommendations as presented.
Items L through N, if I could have a motion, please.
I'll make the motion.
Second? Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
Item O, extracurricular volunteer recommendations as presented.
Items O, motion.
Move it.
Second?
Second.
Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
Item P, substitute and temporary employees as presented.
Item P, if I could have a motion, please. Second?
I'll second.
Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Next is finance with Nancy Squires.
Items A through D are donations as presented.
Motion, please.
I'll make the motion.
Second?
A second.
Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
And items E through G are contracts as presented.
Item E through G, if I could have a motion, please.
Move it.
Second?
Second.
Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Next is the student representative discussion. Maura?
Hello, everyone. So as Dr. Calvin mentioned earlier, we had our homecoming week last week and our spirit week here. We had our powder puff game, and the seniors won that with a score of 39-0. We had our homecoming football game, which we won, I believe, 38-0. It was kind of chilly, but everyone enjoyed being there. We had our Spirit Week, which went very well. Everyone participated in that, and it went really good. We also had our pep rally, which it was amazing to see everybody happy, and we all got to be in Layton again, which was something that we haven't been able to do in a while, so it was nice to be there. So tomorrow there is a chorus concert here. It's a new thing. We're doing a fall chorus concert this year. Typically we start in the winter, so I believe that starts at 7. And then also I'm working right now on creating a Google form for students if they want to report anything that they're excited for or anything they want you guys to hear about. And I'm working with Mr. Lanigan to do that.
Thank you. Next is items from the board. Would any board members have any items tonight?
Well, thank you, Jen, for thanking us. We do appreciate you. And our entire faculty, staff, and administrators. And just a note to everyone out there in the public, and let's choose kindness as we go forward. We're heading into some holiday times. We're going to hopefully be able to be together with family and friends again. So, yeah, let's just choose kindness from now on. Thanks.
Should I?
Yeah.
Yeah, you think I should? I will then. I have two things, but we'll do the first one, the most important one. I would just like to say thank you very much, and as a token of our appreciation to you, Karen, for all your years of service, for everything you've done. You've been tremendous here, and for me, again, 4 years, and I'm the longest one here. There's something wrong with that. You've been such a guidepost. I have a nickname for Karen, which is Smiley. Whenever I call her, well, how you doing, Smiley? Because she's always that way. And what a great face to have on our district, and what a great interface with every time you come in. So we appreciate greatly. And I would just like to everyone on the board just stand up and give it. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Any other items from the board?
Here, I'll go.
Sound like me. Been watching you too long, Pam.
I did want to refer back to Mr. Shaw that spoke earlier relative to an opportunity, because I know it's part of our strategic plan, to work with the community and take an opportunity to look at ways that we are doing that effectively and where we're doing it well and where we can do it better. But I didn't want to make a motion to change that right now. I know we're in process working through the new fee agreement, but we should maybe take a look at that, and I just wanted to offer that for the future. So, again.
Any other items tonight? Would the board like to, I'm sorry, Lisa.
No, I was going to say we need to have it.
Okay. Would the board like to move to executive session and reason?
To discuss the performance of a particular staff member.
Okay. And would there be a need for a vote after executive session?
Yes.
Okay. Could I have a motion, please?
Make the motion.
Second?
I'll second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? You may move to executive session.
And then the second one. Hang on, let me just make sure I make.
Oh, that's what I'm doing too. Kids are both at Washington. So mine, actually, it's never just mine.
Bob's going to read them both.
Oh, okay.
Okay?
You need this?
He's got them
Okay.
both. So motion to come back in session then?
Do we have to move to come back into? Okay, so move to, can I get a motion, please, to re-enter our meeting? Pam, thank you.
No second.
Thank you, Dave, and that is 8:10 PM. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Okay. Bob?
Okay, under a personnel agenda, item Q will be a support staff recommendation for a temporary position. It's a consultant to the secretary, to the superintendent and district clerk on an as-needed basis. Karen Canali at the rate of $75 per hour. The effective date is November 1st through June 30th, 2023.
Move it.
Second it.
Okay, any discussion? Thank you to Karen. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
Okay, item R, support staff recommendation for a provisional appointment, Tyler Broadwell, for senior grounds worker at a salary of $51,620, effective date October 19th.
Got a motion?
Make a motion?
I'll second it.
Thank you, Heidi and Dave. Any discussion? Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? All right, I will entertain a motion to adjourn.
I would move to adjourn.
I will second that.
Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
All right. Thank you and good night.